Hey there, BookTube. Noah. Everyone who reads and must converses the channel. So today is another installment in Tolstoy Triggered. A little Leo Tolstoy focused read along, read throughs that I and the boys over at CodeX Cantina, Una and Crypto, have been doing with me since the inception of this. So I wanted to say happy 1 year to Una and Crypto. Their 1 year video, if anybody's not aware, go watch it. It's hilarious. They came up with this game where they're like rating. There's some weird, some convoluted way of rating and messing with each other's ratings for certain things that they've read over the last year. And it just turns into a complete cluster. And it's so funny. You guys are hilarious. I just can't, get enough. But today is more Leo Tolstoy. So today we're going through a short story, a very strange short story called The Grain. And I see it, the grain the size of a hen's egg. And so I'm going to do my normal thing where I go through the story while I'm talking about it. I'm not going to give it all straightforward. But you can actually, go read this short story or even audio it on YouTube. There's a couple of audio versions of it in about 6 to 7 minutes. It's so short. It's about a page and a half of story. So it's just this kind of parable-ish story. And what Tolstoy is trying to get at with it, there is something given on the face of it that is what Tolstoy is kind of giving you as far as his meaning for what it is. But how he delivers it is very strange. And I think that he's saying more, of course, than what is on the face of it. So we're just going to go through it. The story starts off where this grain is found. And this grain is about the size of an egg, a hen's egg. So an egg like, you might find in your refrigerator. And so a grain that big, a grain of corn, is what it turns out to be. And some kids find it. A traveler passes by and he sees these kids playing with it, and he buys it from them for a penny because it's not worth anything to the kids, right? You give them a penny, and you have this kind of item that is very unique. And so the traveler takes it to the town, and there's a king that lives in this town, a king of the domain there, and he sells it to the king as an oddity, makes a little bit of money, and that's that. They're in possession of this large grain, and the king asks his wise men. It says the king asks his wise men, "What is this thing?" And they look in all their books and they can't figure out what it is. And there's the first thing that I want to touch on, is that the wise men don't know what it is after searching all their books. And true wisdom doesn't come from facts, from books. You can't gain real wisdom. You can gain knowledge, and you can gain facts and knowledge from reading and from fiction, nonfiction, whatever. You can gain knowledge, but you can't gain wisdom. And these wise men turn out to be not very wise at all, right? They can't even identify what this thing is. And so how does the king identify it? Well, they set it out on a windowsill, and a bird comes by, that says a hen comes by, and pecks at it enough to put a hole in it. And when they see that, then they say, "Oh, well, that's corn." This is a grain of corn this big. Well, how did a grain of corn get this big? So how do they gain their wisdom as to what this thing really is a natural happening of and experiencing that hen pecking a hole in it. So that is how wisdom is gained. And Leo Tolstoy shows that very succinctly. I've probably talked about it more already than in the story, its delivery. So somebody has to know something about this. The king says, get me an old peasant, an old farmer, an old man who's a farmer that can tell me if he's ever seen anything like this before. So they find an old farmer, an old peasant, just like that, and they bring him before the king. And he's age bent, walking with 2 crutches, can't hear, can barely hear. Only with great difficulty can he hear what's being said to him, and he can't hardly see. He has to put his hands on it to kind of, feel what it is. And they're asking him, this is a grain of corn. Have you ever seen or used a grain of corn? Have you ever sowed this? Or have you ever bought a grain of corn like this in your life? Have you ever seen anything like this? And he said, after much, hardship trying to even hear it, he says no. So this first man is incapable of pretty much anything. And he's practically deaf and blind, and he knows not what this grain is or where it comes from. And that's the modern view right there that Tolstoy is showing. He says, well, my father had told me about, grain that was more abundant and more plentiful in his day. Maybe you should ask him about it. So they say, okay, let's go get your father and bring him before the king. They bring the father before the king, and the father is walking on 1 crutch, and the father can hear. The father is kind of not blind, but still has a little trouble seeing, but he's still can't hear very well. So they have a little difficulty with that, but he's still a little more capable than the other one. And he still says he doesn't know where it is. He's never seen anything like this. But he says, in my day, which is the father of the first man, in my day, we sowed corn and had enough for everybody. And when need arose with somebody, we gave it. And it was more of a communal kind of farming, communal society. And things were more plentiful and abundant at that time, but they were still limited. And he says, but my father actually has told me about corn, a grain that was this big and this abundant and that grew like this, that gave seed like this. Maybe you should ask him. And I said, okay, go get the grandfather, right? And they go and get the grandfather. Well, the grandfather comes in and he's walking sound mind and body, no crutches, no, he can see well, he can hear well, he's very well spoken. His voice is very pleasing, it says. And they ask him, what, have you ever seen any corn like this? Have you ever seen anything like? He says, yeah, well, this is the one in the same grain that we used to sow all over the place anytime we sowed. And the king says, well, where did you sow it? And what was your field? And when can we buy some? And he says, the same grain was abundant in his day, and he used it to feed others. It was a giving. Everything was given. He was full, and it was to be given, is the thing. There was no buying and selling in his day. He didn't know anything of buying and selling. And there was not even any barter system at that time. It was a completely come eat and drink without price is the kind of feeling I get, the kind of heavenly kingdom from the Bible. Come and eat and drink without price, buy your milk and wine without money. And where is his land? He says, well, my land is God's earth. Wherever I planted and sown and reaped was my land. And nobody ever thought of land as theirs or anything like that. What was theirs was their own labor. And the land and the grain and all that is God's, and we are stewards of that. He didn't say that in the story. This is what I'm, kind of take as what Tolstoy's really getting at with that, is that, you're steward of that. What is yours to give is your own industry, your own labor is all that there is. So the king asked him two final questions. Why did the earth bear more in the past? One. And two, why is the grandson so much worse off than the son, who is in turn so much worse off than you are physically? And in the reply is given a couple of virtues and a couple of vices, and this is what is said explicitly in the story, that before people and people lived by their own labor and God-given talents, and two, living by the laws of God. So the laws of the land, the laws of the laws of nature, where we're the only thing there is to work with, right? Not laying a man-made system on top of that and using that system to buy and sell and give people what they need and get what you need kind of stuff. Everything now goes through a system. Everything at Tolstoy's time went through a system. There's not just live and let live and do that kind of thing. It was always through a system. How much is something worth? That kind of stuff. The vices that is explicitly laid out is now why the son and the grandson are worse off is because they're dependent on others. There is a dependency on others for their labor, and actually a coveting the fruit of another for their work. And so one of the big things that this story is kind of pointing at, I think, is self-sufficiency. That a righteous man, a righteous person, is going to do for themselves and keep for themselves what they need only, and also not sell what they have for more than it's worth. They're going to fair living, plain fair living. And it is an ideal that is kind of a hard pill to swallow. Even Christians don't like to hear it. That when it comes down to it, the kingdom of God and the kind of society that was built in early Christianity is a communal, what modern people would term, like a social anarchy. A socialist anarchy where God is the head, God is the ruler, and everything belongs to everyone. Everything belongs to God. There's no personal property. And this kind of thing was bore out very, very well by Tolstoy. I would point you to The Kingdom of God is Within You. He wrote that very late in life. And in that explicitly and very logically bores out the directive in Christianity that there is no personal property to a Christian. And it's a hard pill to swallow, for sure, right? Especially in the kind of society that we've built here in the United States. So I hope you enjoyed this booktube, and check it out. The Grain as Big as a Hen's Egg. Very strange how it's told, I think. And, very, it totally makes sense to Tolstoy's later life, where he was boring out these kind of ideas that are very hard to accept. So, thank you very much. Catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.